right, a little bit about today's agenda for the workshop. A little short introduction. We'll go into preparation, curiosity, strategies, delivery, where we actually do it, and then reclose. Jolie, I see your hands up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, it's about the Zoom. If there's ever a point we're not able to participate in the breakout, how would you like us to take care of that?
If you're choosing not to participate in a breakout?
No, like say we're indisposed for something comes up that we need to step out in the middle of workshop, but we still want to stay in the workshop, but maybe at that moment that you do breakout or we have to step out, should we indicate in our name or something?
Yeah, that does make it tricky. I'm asking that people that are here participate fully. Yeah, I'm not sure what to say about that.
Okay, I'm just being like in an example of all of a sudden I need to go to the restroom or somebody approaches me that needs. Yeah.
So we can, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. Do the best you can to participate. And we will take a quick break around halftime. So to take care of our bio needs.
Yeah, Jolie, just put something in the chat and I'll just make a note of it. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Maggie. So what is this thing called scary honesty? So Marshall Rosenberg coined the term scary honesty for expressing what's alive in us. It's scary because it's terrifying in our culture to tell someone else what's really true for us internally. And there's a common problem called this, what he calls the jackal postal delivery service. So it doesn't matter how beautifully you offer your honesty, the other person hears a judgment. And they very likely need empathy because in our culture, we don't teach empathy either. So part of learning how to be honest with people is dealing with them freaking out. And yeah, and there's an important distinction in nonviolent communication, and that is our fear is really, we're really afraid of our reactions to their reactions. So that's an important distinction in nonviolent communication because other people don't cause our feelings, they stimulate them. So we're not afraid of other people. We're afraid of our own internal reactions to their reactions. So we're scared of our own thoughts and feelings that are evoked by the other person. So the other part that it's kind of important is to notice that we might be blaming them for our fear and our nervousness. So this is a place where, you know, there's, at least in the culture in which I grew up, there was a lot of what NVC calls emotional slavery, this belief that other people cause my feelings and vice versa, that I somehow cause other people's feelings. So I want to pause. Well, I think I'll go on. Maybe I will. So really the goal in our communication is to express ourselves in a way that builds a flow of connection. So that's where we'd like to go. And part of the skill that we're going to be developing is the skill of facilitating that connection. So this is what we cover. It's almost like kind of the goal of the 10-week series is to develop this skill of facilitating connection, which means, you know, having empathy and honesty and dialogue with the intent to create connection. So that was kind of a lot of words there. And if you don't feel uncomfortable at hearing those words, then maybe I haven't said them properly, because what I expressed in there is pretty countercultural, because in the culture that I grew up in, I was raised to believe that I'm responsible for other people's feelings, and that that guilt and shame is used to control behavior. So that's the culture that I grew up in. And Marshall Rosenberg calls that first stage of, he talks about different stages of liberation. He calls that emotional slavery, the belief that we cause each other's feelings. So we don't live in a vacuum. So what we do recognize is that we have an impact on each other, but the cause isn't the other person. The cause comes from inside, and in nonviolent communication, that cause, we name it as coming from our needs. So there might be a need of mine that's not being fully satisfied in the moment. So, for example, if you know, let's say someone was in my face speaking louder than I'm comfortable with, I might feel afraid or scared. And that feeling of being scared is because of my need for safety not being met. So I own that it's my needs that are causing the feelings, not the other person. So I want to pause again for comments or questions around this, because it's an important concept. Nicole, I see that your hand's up, and then Chris. Go ahead, Nicole.
So when you say that we don't cause, or people don't cause our emotions, people stimulate them, can you sort of distinguish the difference between cause and stimulate?
Yeah, and one way to think about it is, for the same stimulus to two different people, they're going to have two different reactions. So let's say that same person is, you know, really close to me and speaking louder than I'm used to. For someone else, maybe they grew up with that and they're really comfortable with it, and they see it as an opportunity to connect. So it's totally an internal evaluation that creates a different experience. Was that helpful, Nicole?
Yeah, my only question would be, how then do we not turn it on ourselves and like blame, say it's our fault because it's our discomfort, not what they're doing, if that makes sense. Like, it's not what they're doing that's causing the discomfort, it's my reaction to it. So how do we not negate that?
Yeah, well, part of what you'll learn in this course, and I have a separate 10-week series, Free Yourself from Reactivity, that starts in May. But part of the practice, especially the inner NVC practice, which we're going to touch on today briefly, there's a process of self-empathy where I might discover my own judgments of myself, and there could be self-blame in there. I might have a story that it's my fault, or that I'm, you know, somehow defective. I might be feeling shame, the belief that I'm somehow that there's something wrong with me. So that's part of the process of nonviolent communication, is to become aware of these messages.
Hey,
Thank
James.
you so much.
Yeah.
James,
Thanks,
could you put the slide back up, the last slide? Is that possible right now, or?
Yeah, sure, totally.
And
The facilitating connection one or the previous one?
And to leave them on a little bit longer, because some people are more visual and they need to read it. I'm not sure, Jolie, which one was it?
Just the previous one, please.
The crucial NVC distinction? Not being afraid of your own internal reactions?
Yes, please.
All right, thanks. Thanks for asking. Doing what I can here to navigate the technology. That one? Okay, so I'll leave that up for a bit, and you can use a split screen to see the screen and the faces. All right, let's take a couple more questions and then we'll move on. I see John and then Chris. Your hand's up. Go ahead, John.
Hi, yeah. I don't know if this relates to Susan's question in the chat or not, but that term emotional slavery is very powerful, and I think evokes a lot of different feelings. But I love this concept. So I guess my question really is just to ask you to say more about emotional slavery and emotional freedom, if that correlates.
Yeah.
Because this is something that I get that it's a really important concept, and I love to dig deeper into it.
Yeah, thanks, John, for asking. And this comes straight out of Marshall Rosenberg's book. I think it's in chapter 2. I'm not sure, but there are 3 stages to emotional liberation. The first one is emotional slavery that we just talked about, the belief that other people cause our feelings, and conversely, that I cause other people's feelings. So that's the emotional slavery part. The second stage is what he calls the obnoxious stage. So be aware of the obnoxious stage, because I was in it. Oh my God, it's really painful. So as I start to acknowledge my needs, then I have this feeling of, or this reaction to other people like, hey man, take care of your own stuff, right? This is your own, your own problem. Go solve it, right? So that awakening to my own needs creates this obnoxiousness. So that's stage 2. And stage 3 is what Marshall Rosenberg calls emotional liberation. It's the stage at which I'm connected to my own needs and my own internal experience. And from that place of being self-connected, I have a natural curiosity and compassion towards others. It just happens naturally. I don't really have to work at it, because I've taken care of myself enough to where I'm able to connect with my truth and be at peace with it. I fully accept it and love myself. And there's this natural curiosity and compassion that goes towards others. So those are the 3 steps, come straight out of Marshall Rosenberg's book, Nonviolent Communication. Thanks for asking that, John.
Sure. I guess I want to also underscore, if I can, the chat with both Susan and Carrie asking about the term slavery and its historical context.
Yeah, again, I'm quoting Marshall Rosenberg's book. I would rather, refer you to that. And yeah, that's my suggestion. All right, so thanks, John. I hear in that maybe consideration for some of the dialogue that's going on in the chat room. All right, so I'd like to take a couple more questions. Chris and then Nikki. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, the whole idea of not being attached to attaching your feelings to what other people do is sounds very reasonable, but if you drive it to an extreme, then you end up at a point where other people can do whatever they want to you, and you always question yourself, am I just responding in an unreasonable way? Should I just be okay with this? And I think other people have asked questions before me had kind of a similar slant, but let's maybe take it to the extreme point of like other people are actually mistreating you, and what do you do in that situation?
Yeah,
you can remove yourself from the situation, but it will take a while until, like, it will probably take longer to remove yourself from the situation if you're trained to ignore to some degree how you feel about things.
Yeah, and thanks for asking. I want to hone in on what you just said, the word ignore your feelings. And I don't think I said that, but if I did, I'd like to correct it. And what I am saying is that I fully connect with my feelings. So whatever feeling comes up, I accept it, own it, acknowledge it, and I realize that I'm feeling this because of my needs. So so I'd like to be sure and say it again in different words, that I am fully accepting my reaction, my feelings, and I attribute my feelings to my needs either being met or not met. Chris, would you be willing to sort of give me a sense of what you heard me say, just so I know you're getting it?
Oh, no. You didn't say anything to the point of ignore your feelings, and I didn't hear that. But
Yes.
nevertheless, I think it's
Could you tell me what you heard? Because I'd like to know that you just heard what I said.
sure. Yeah, basically what I heard from you was that you feel your feelings, you connect them with the needs that you have, and then you see them as they are. And I think that step that's missing is the processing part. Like
Yeah.
once you know that you have these feelings, once you've seen them, once you know the needs that they're connected with, how do you process that with the other person to get to a point where you want to be?
And that, yeah, thanks. And that's the whole purpose of the workshop, right? Is that we get to express them. That's the honest expression piece. And then if we want connection, then that's what we go over in the 10-week series. So you're in the right place. You're asking the right questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
We
So thanks,
we
Chris.
We can take that slide down now.
Okay.
Just not needed right now.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, Maggie. Thank you, Chris. Nikki, and then I see one more hand, Jolie. Nikki and Jolie, and then we'll move on.
Everybody, I have three questions in one. So is it essential to be able to identify or know your needs, or just to be able to feel them more easily over practice? Especially for me, like on the fly, it's harder. I can really sit with my feelings in meditation, but when I'm immediately met with a conflict, or even I'm making it up as a conflict, there's that freezing moment.
Yeah. Can I answer that one first?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know about you, but when I started this stuff, I had a hard time even identifying feelings. And needs was like way out there. So so it is a practice. And the first thing that I notice, and actually I need to train myself even to look at this. It might be tension in my belly, shoulder tension. It might be I'm holding my breath. It might be that I'm clenching my fists or clenching my jaw. So becoming aware of my internal reactions is sort of the first step. And it's a learning process. It's almost like learning a new language. So learning feelings and learning needs. So so I didn't have a vocabulary because I wasn't raised on this stuff. So so having feelings and needs, in fact, let me send you some. Having a sheet, like a sheet of feelings and needs, can be super helpful in identifying words that help you describe that. So I'm just sending. Oh, it went to Maggie. Let me send it to everybody. So was that helpful, Nikki?
Yeah, so it is essential for the nonviolent communication, that step, but in the class it will be covered to help us become more practiced in identifying those needs.
Yes, it's part of the practice. So if you take the 10-week series, we spend a little bit more time on it. So today we're sort of like dipping our toe into the stream. One last thing is, for me, learning is more of a spiral. Like I don't get it just by reading a book it doesn't like, I don't fully like become enlightened just by, reading a book or taking a workshop. For me, it's in the practice is where the learning gets integrated. Yeah. So thanks, Nikki. Thanks for your
Thank you.
question. And then Jolie, and then I'd like to move on.
So I was noticing when you mentioned those stages, which I thank you for delineating the stages. I was noticing what you just mentioned, the spiral. Like, I'm like, oh man, I've been practicing NVC for 10 years and I still am like, hey, they blah, 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 blah. Or
Right.
I noticed the other day I shouted at somebody, hey, if you're feeling shame or guilt, it's you, it's not me. I'm not putting that on you. And then other times I'm like, oh man, are you okay? Like I'm noticing blank, blank, blank. So I just like, thank you for those stages. And I just, for those that are new, wanted to share, like, I think it's a cyclical thing in the moment. We could drop into any stage. Do you find that to be true as well, James?
Sure. So hearing that you're wanting to acknowledge the different flavors of the stages of liberation, and yes, it's almost like NVC is it's almost like a door to personal growth, because I start to notice that I might have unconscious reactions that I have, that I'm more likely to just like react. So reactivity is so being able to notice that I'm reacting is a way to get back to connection, is to so it's a journey is what I'm saying. You can't yes, we're human beings, we're not robots. We can't just reprogram our operating system. It takes like an unlearning to go with the learning. Yeah, so thanks. All right, I'd like to move on to go forward. Thanks so much for the questions. I enjoy the discussion that comes around it.
James,
Yeah,
I just want to make a quick point about some comments that are in the comment in
Sure.
the chat.
Go ahead.
Just that the word, especially with what's going on in the world these days, and how it's racism is just much more in our face, that the term slavery is triggering, and that maybe we could talk about the effects of it. Use the word oppression or control or inhumane or something like that, as opposed to the word slavery. And I know that slavery, you were referring back to that's what Marshall called it, but now that we've evolved since Marshall introduced that phrase, that maybe the phrasing could evolve as well, because
Sure.
that word slavery is really.
Are you recommending that we call it emotional oppression?
I think that's what people were saying in the chat. Yeah. That might
Sure.
be better. I just wanted to acknowledge that because it's in the chat right now.
Okay.
So I don't want to,
Yeah, thanks, Maggie.
alienate anybody by not talking about it. So
Yeah, thanks for voicing that. And yeah, we are evolving as a culture for sure. And so we might choose to rename some of the things that we've changed, using new words to acknowledge our greater awareness. Yeah, so emotional dependency, actually codependency might be another term we use there. But yeah, I'll have to think about that. So, but again, I'm just quoting Marshall Rosenberg's book, and I'll leave it at that. Jolene, do you have a question? Do you want to be heard right now? Go ahead.
I do. Thank you. I don't know if it's so much a question as just kind of a comment of emotional oppression. It doesn't necessarily to me feel like it captures what we're talking about here. It's almost like emotional hijacking, maybe. When our emotions are so overpowering or overwhelming that that they take over in the moment. So it's like emotional hijacking, but oppression is oppression would be like, you're not You're not feeling your emotions. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm just getting kind of confused about
Yeah.
these words now. Emotional oppression doesn't seem to quite capture, I
Yeah.
guess, what we're talking.
Thanks, Jolene. And I agree with you. I think there's something missing from the original intent. And I want to give you maybe a little bit more context for what Marshall Rosenberg intended when he called it emotional slavery. And my sense is that he was referring to the cultural use of guilt and shame to control people. So in the culture that I grew up in, guilt and shame were used to manipulate me. So someone might, say, oh, you hurt me when you do that, or oh, you got to be on your, as a parent to kind of guilt your kids into doing studying more. You got to be, oh, mommy is so hurt. That's like oppressive. I mean, that's like trying to control someone through guilt and shame. So he called it emotional slavery. For me, it works. And, if other people want to call it something else, I'm okay with that. I think what the concept is really important is that we don't want to, we basically want to own our autonomy and agency, and to find some freedom, some liberation from the oppression of guilt and shame that's used culturally. So that's the goal. So Amora, I see that your hand's up. You want to speak
Yes,
up?
I appreciate what everyone is trying to do. And I'm not trying to speak on behalf of everybody Black, but for me, I came in this space to kind of escape from the things that are going on right now, just for a moment, 2 hours. And with the word slavery, context is key. As long as people are not being racist when they're focusing on slavery, we can use the word. The word is not the end of the world, the word exists. And I think we should just go ahead and use the word in relation to the message that is being brought.
Mm.
Okay, so context is key. You ain't got to erase every word in the world. Just don't say the N word, don't be racist. And now let's focus back on the topic. And it's exhausting for me. I'm about to log off because I'm trying to learn and trying to focus. And this is one thing I feel like white people do. They take it to a level 100 all the time, and it is not that necessary. So
Thank you,
use
Amora.
the word slavery and let's get back to business. We only have so much time, and I love everybody here, but we only have so much time, but it's exhausting. It's like, damn, I can't even escape. That's what I found really nice about nonviolent communication, is trying to find also a way to escape, to be in a safe space. But when we talk about this, it's kind of like, okay, y'all know what racism is. If you don't, pick up the new Jim Crow. Let's get on to the topic at hand.
Thank you, Amora.
You're welcome.
Let's move on and get some work done. And the context is key. And I love that you said that, because we're actually going to talk about context in the context of delivering scary honesty. Thank you. So having said that, I'd like to move on. Thanks, Amora.